Okay, so an update to the video that I put out a couple of years ago where I fixed the boom on a skid steer on a 329D John Deere. Was difficult to put back together. Worked for probably about 400 hours, and then it failed again spectacularly. It went from a drip to spraying onto the side of the machine in the course of about 2 hours of use. So it failed spectacularly. So the same one that I fixed, and the other side has never had an issue the whole time that I've owned the machine, which is not a whole lot longer than that number of hours. So took it back apart and was going to have somebody else work on it because I figured I did something wrong, and I did not reassemble the thing incorrectly. Basically the packages that you get from John Deere, they include a sheet like this that pretty much says put it back together the way that it was, because there's updates made, and the instruction sheet doesn't outline which one exactly that you have, even though you order the parts that are specific to your machine. And they come with a bunch of other parts like these that don't belong on your machine, or they don't belong on my 329D. They go to something else. So you're pretty much at the mercy of whoever built it last, reassembled it last, and hope that they put it together the proper way as far as lining up the seals and all of that. So what I actually did was I went down to the local James River place. They were very nice. They helped me make sure that I was putting it back together correctly, and it was correct. So the people who had done it last had done it properly. Just for whatever reason it had failed. And as we were looking at this, there were several places, like for example right here, where the lip of this thing had been dented in just a little bit, and that may have caused the seal that goes in this groove to fail. So they recommended filing that down to get any rough spots out. So I did that. I've done that already. I've obviously removed all of the seals from this thing. I'm going to replace them all again, since it's a difficult thing to do, to take this thing apart. They recommended going ahead and doing that. So, and then it also inside here. Now, I think in the last video I showed myself cleaning inside this thing just a little, and I don't recall exactly what I was using, but they suggested just using essentially emery cloth. This is 400 wet dry sandpaper, and this actually works really well. It looks better than whatever I was using last time. So actually just get it a little oily and then sanding on it. And I need to do a little bit more just to get it completely smooth on the inside, and then take any nicks or things off of here. And then they gave me a couple of tips. This is the part that goes on the rod. Well, of course, both parts go on the rod. This is the back end. This is the front. Actually goes like that. And they gave me a couple tips on how to put this seal on, which I'll show in just a minute. In the meantime, I'm going to clean this thing up. So this side, getting it in the inside is a little rough. There's multiple ways to do it. I actually bought the little kit. This little guy right here from Amazon. It's pretty cheap. And it has these tools in it so you can turn the thing. Or twist the thing so that you can get it in there. But the groove side is supposed to go towards the pressure. I'm assuming, so that it can expand a little bit and further the seal, further compress against the rod. So it goes like that. This is the outside. Obviously it's weathered. This is the inside. So it generally doesn't see the light of day. This one's a little interesting in that it has a little nick right here. I looked on the previous one, and it's a very square nick. It's just the one right here. So it appears to be something that's supposed to be there. Here's hoping, right? So there's a rubber ring that goes inside this one. Those go to this. In fact, I can put that one on, because it goes on fairly easily. Just like that. This one has this backer. Goes on, and it's not really a stretchy one. So you're just gonna have to work it on there. There, that's in its groove. And then the seal part goes on the pressure side, so the pressure will seal against that. So that's how that gets assembled. And then there's this thin ring, which is just kind of from what I understand, just catches the last of any dirt or anything that's trying to get in there, and it's supposed to fit in this. It's not really a pressure ring, it's just kind of a first defense against dirt and crud from getting in there that this doesn't wipe off. Well, I guess that's on the outside. Yeah, just keeps it from getting in. And then there's this compression ring, which is a major challenge to put in. They gave me an idea on that, which I'm going to try, and I'll show you, and hopefully it works better. So that's pretty much assembled. That's an extra part. Okay. Alright, so here's the trick. This thing expands and contracts with heat and cold. So it expands when it is warmed up, becomes more pliable, and it contracts when it's cold. So they said stick this in some hot water, like that. Whoops. And let it warm up. This isn't quite boiling water, it's just pretty hot water. And then you're able to more easily slip it onto this thing. And once it's slipped onto that, they say then to take this whole thing and stick it in the freezer, and it will contract around that. Now, if you watched my first video, I reassembled it once and actually shaved a little bit off that little orange ring when I was trying to put it in, because it doesn't want to go in. It fits in very tightly. So I think the idea would be to have it cold and contract it as much as possible when you put it in. They did suggest, when I called the first time, like when I did that first video, of using a hose clamp to kind of clamp it down, to use a clamp to provide mechanical pressure to squeeze it, basically. And that did seem to work the second time I put it in. It does kind of make sense, I suppose, because the orange ring expanding and contracting with heat. Hydraulic oil gets pretty hot when you're using the machine, so it would contract, or it would expand and seal off that, seal off the oil from going from one side to the other. Now this is the only thing that prevents oil from going to the high pressure side. Sorry, goes like that. The nut goes right here on the end of the rod. So this would be the high pressure side. So usually when you're pushing things up, that's or digging something out, that would be the high pressure side, and it can slip past that and get up to the other one like this. And one of the things they were telling me is if this fails for whatever reason, if there's slippage past that, and it did seem like I had some slippage, a little more than normal, or than what I recalled. And again, I'm a fairly self-admitted novice with these machines. But if there's more slippage past this high pressure side into this side, that these seals aren't designed to hold that high pressure, and so then it could cause these ones to fail more quickly. So I'm kind of wondering if that's what happened. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that thing expand, and boy, it looks like it's expanding already. Stick it on, put it in the freezer, and then I'm going to go ahead and reassemble this thing. And right now we're having a bit of a cold snap where I live in North Carolina. So the temperature this morning was like 38 degrees. So I'm just going to stick it in the back of my truck and let it sit there tonight. And then I'll take it up there in the morning and try and put it in there. I think I may go ahead and put this clamp on it as well. I don't want to try to reassemble this thing straight out of the freezer and count on me putting it in the thing, since I have to drive it to where the skid steer is before it's frozen. I mean, it's either that or wrap it with some ice and whatnot. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But that's what I'm going to try. Let me see if this thing is already hot enough. They were suggesting you kind of stretch it out a little bit like this once it's hot. Maybe I'll go ahead and get this water boiling. I think perhaps the trick would be to stretch on this a little bit, stick it in. It's got to take just seconds to heat up. There's not a lot of mass to it. I said to do. Pulling it apart like that. Until you get it sufficiently stretched to get it on. Wow, look at that. I think I stretched it a little bit too much. So, let it cool down now. Hopefully get in the right spot. Again, there's the seal in there already. I have to scratch the freezing part because it didn't seem to contract really at all. And now all I have is a part that's getting water condensation on it because it's cold. So I think I'm going to have to let it warm up. And then, because it's really stiff now, the orange ring. I'll warm it up and then I'll do the hose clamp trick. I guess that's what I'll do. Anyway. So putting it in the freezer didn't work. As you saw on the cold steel, it got condensation when I got it out. I didn't dry it off right away, and it continued to condense on there and actually tarnished or rusted just a little bit, so this must not be stainless steel. Or they're iron filings, I don't know. Anyway, it did not work to contract the ring. So what I ended up doing was heating it up just a little bit with the heat gun on a setting of low, just enough to where it was warm. I mean, I could still touch this thing just fine, to where it was warm, and then I put the hose clamp on it, covering it with a little bit of paper towel, and I left that overnight, and that seemed to work. I took it off occasionally to look at it, and had to do that carefully. I think I stretched it out too much. I mean, it is quite a bit larger than the thing, than what it was supposed to be. I'm going to loosen this up, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and leave this on, even while I put it back together all the way up to when I'm ready to insert it into the cylinder, just to keep it as small as it can be. Just making sure to get this thing centered on there nicely. Pretty much clamp this thing all the way down. There's that rubber ring, that O-ring on the inside, and so it's just squishing that. So I think I'll leave that as that is, and I'm going to go ahead and reassemble it now. Sand off that little bit of rust that showed up. Should be good. Okay, so here we're gonna assemble the shaft again, just brushing off whatever gunk might have gone in the threads. And interestingly, I got a comment on the first video where I had repaired this thing about using a thread locker. Just after I had done this, so I didn't get to incorporate the suggestion as they said. But here's one thing that was suggested from the guys at James River, which which was to use Vaseline or something like that to coat the inside, basically anywhere there's a seal that's going to be rubbing. And that actually really did seem to help assembling this thing again, make it more smooth, because I think that's where things got messed up the last time. I think I damaged that orange seal or some other seal. I don't have as many run hours on it since I repaired this, so I guess I can't say for sure, but so far so good. I've had other issues with the skid steers. That seems to be a constant with skid steers, but not anything associated with the repaired cylinder, knock on wood. So I just greased these thing up really well. The suggestion that was given to me for the thread locker was to spray the threads with I think they called it a sealant. It was something that was supposed to negate the tendency for oils and whatnot on the threads, to reduce the effectiveness of the thread locker. Another comment was that I used way too much thread locker, and neither of these did I see before, or receive before I did this, one or the other. So I probably used way too much thread locker again, but it definitely was on there. This was the same one that I repaired the first time. The nut was a little bit rough to get off, but I was able to get it off, and it didn't fall off while it was inside, so I suppose it worked. And here's where I'm using too much thread locker again. Probably not too bad. And here's where I put weights on the end of the board that I have a vise bolted to. So it's on the end of the 2x6s, the double up 2x6s there. And that gives me sufficient counter leverage so that I can actually accomplish tightening up this nut without the things flying off the handle, so to speak. 255. Probably don't need to do this multiple times, but did not want that nut coming off inside the cylinder. And here I'm just working this O-ring out of the way so that it won't get damaged once I take it out to install it in the cylinder. And here we're installing it. So the same trick again. Well, smoothing it up, sandpaper, and cleaning that out a little bit. And then you'll see here in a second, I go ahead and I add some, or lube that up pretty good with Vaseline again. And that really did seem to help. So I can recommend that. Assuming that Vaseline doesn't cause issues in combination with the oil, the hydraulic oil, but so far so good is all I can say. And here we're making final preparations for inserting the rod into the cylinder. This is that spacer. That ring there on the end, don't want to forget that. And here I'm lubing up this seal again with Vaseline. This is in October, it was cold, so you can see it's not really very fluid at all. And I think that orange ring is the one that I managed to damage the first time. So just kind of slowly wiggling it around, working it in there carefully, and that was just a whole lot easier than the first time I did it, where I even managed to shave off a little bit, and so I went and got another one. Managed to get it in, but I'm afraid that I damaged it then, so hopefully this repair will last significantly longer. Lubed up the seals again. And then insert it past that initial seal as much as you can. And now we get the fun part, which is trying to get the that snap ring to function. And this works much better when you have two people on this bar clamp technique that I came up with. I have one handling the compression end while I'm down on the business end trying to tap that ring in, and you'll see that in a minute. But here, pushing it in just with the bar clamp really works well. This was another trick that the guys at James River had suggested, was using a large set of channel locks. So I actually went and bought like a really large pair of channel locks. That didn't really, either I don't have the proper technique or something, but that didn't work at all for me. So I was back to what I did before, which was basically, and here you can see my wife's helping me, put the clamp that assembly to where it was snug in there, right up against that snap ring, and then basically using a screwdriver and a hammer, just tapping it in little by little as continued gentle compression was placed on that thing, and eventually managed to get it past that point. And the nice thing is, with the bar clamp, using it in this fashion with the gentle pressure, it's not like it's gonna, once it gets past that point, launch it all the way inside the cylinder, or then you're having a problem. It's just not going to do that. So here it finally had gotten there. A little bit more on either side, just to help that compression ring compress. And then you can see it. Whenever it happens, you can see it here in just a sec. It'll kind of jump just a little. Okay, so now we're moving that black O-ring into the small groove that we'd cleaned up earlier. This little O-ring is just, from what they told me, is just to keep dirt and crud like that from working its way in there. And here we're going to move it in the rest of the way. There she goes. And we can just ease it on up in there. And that's it. Now we gotta put the collar on so that it doesn't go in all the way. Close it up, and she's done. snugged it on up to the collar anyway. Seems like people found the first repair helpful. I've gotten quite a few people viewing it and a few comments on it. Maybe this will help people do it better. Don't know. One of the main reasons I'm doing this, though, is so that when I need to do it again, I can remember what I did. And I actually did review the first one when I had to do this again. The last thing was you want your skid steer level and the boom down, and then you want to check your hydraulic fluid level so that it's within the window. At least on mine, this is what it looks like. Hope you enjoyed it. Take it easy and good luck.